All right. Hello. Thanks for joining. I'm Emily Elizabeth, Vice President of OnSpring, which is a no-code cloud-based GRC software. We help information security professionals manage, track, and report on organizational risk and compliance. I'm here with Nicole Windholtz, our Director of Information Security, and Ellen Pantanius, our General Counsel. We're going to talk about cybersecurity insurance today. We're going to provide a high-level overview of what's included, and then we're going to break it down and talk through what it really means for you as an information security professional and what you should start planning for and what you should start thinking about. By the end of this session, we want you to walk away with 4 specific learnings. The first is understanding the fine print that's included in your cybersecurity insurance policy. The second is tracking the awesomeness of your organization's information security program. 3, knowing your organization's exposure from your key suppliers and your key partners. And then the 4th is partnering up with your legal team at least once a year to negotiate what's going to be included in your organization's cybersecurity insurance policy. So Ellen is going to take us through Cybersecurity Insurance 101, a high level, what's included.
Yeah, so your policy will usually cover costs that are directly associated with a security breach. So those costs might include documenting and investigating an attack. With this, it's important to engage with breach counsel, and you'll need to consult your insurance provider's approved vendor list to determine which counsel you should use. As a best practice, it's a good idea to engage with that person, sign an engagement letter, have a discussion before a security breach occurs so that you can contact them immediately when you need to. Secondly, your policy will cover data recovery and hardware repairs, and you can use a digital forensics firm from your insurance provider's approved vendor list for this. It will also typically cover notifying customers and regulatory agencies. And again, there will be approved vendors to assist you with that as well. It will include crisis management, including PR damage control, and you can work with a PR firm to help you with that. It will cover legal defense expenses. The defense counsel that you use for this might be the same as your breach response counsel, or it might be a different firm. Both of those providers should be listed on your vendor's approved list, however. It will include ransomware payments, most likely, and your digital forensics provider might be able to help you with that. And then it's important to remember that these costs will be covered only if your claim is submitted pursuant to your policy's requirements. So be very careful about reviewing those beforehand and understanding what you need to do to report a claim so that you can make sure to do that properly.
So these are basic foundational levels that would be included in any cybersecurity insurance policy. But if you want to take it a step further, there are 2 ways to do that.
Okay, so your cyber liability policy will usually cover 2 types of coverage. That would be first-party and third-party coverage. First-party coverage is your typical direct type of expenses. So this might include business interruption coverage during the period when your business is shut down due to a security breach. That would include costs to mitigate or avoid a loss or a system failure. It might include contingent business interruption if a security breach affects one of your key outsourced service providers. It might include digital asset destruction, data retrieval and system restoration costs, social engineering and cybercrime, reputational loss, the cost of extortion events, breach response and remediation expenses. And it might also include some dynamic loss prevention resources, such as scan assessments and also court attendance costs. So those are some of the first-party direct types of expenses that your policy is likely to cover.
And then third party would be different.
Yes. Your policy also likely includes third-party coverage. So that would include more of the damages and legal defense expenses that you might incur due to a security breach or privacy breach claim. It might include the costs of regulatory proceedings and any fines or penalties that those impose. It might include media liability. Those would be costs of a trademark infringement claim, a defamation claim, or a claim pertaining to an individual's right of privacy. And finally, it might also include technology and professional services liability. And that an example of that might be an error that prevents your software from performing as it's supposed to, or a title infringement claim with respect to your software or computer code.
So I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that if you're an information security professional, you probably don't deal with this type of legal information on a daily basis. So let's maybe kind of break this down. We rely on our legal team to be the experts and subject matter experts in the insurance policy itself, but our information security team, they're the ones that have to respond and react in the event of some type of security breach. So we talked earlier, the most important thing that you can know about your organization's cybersecurity insurance policy is understanding the fine print. So Nicole, we're going to have you break down for us, what does that really mean as someone who runs, an information security, cybersecurity team?
So in order to even qualify and maintain your cybersecurity insurance, you need an airtight information security program. Do you have security awareness training for your employees? How frequently are you training them? And does it include phishing simulations? Do you have defense in depth? Does it include malware protection such as EDR or XDR? What about data encryption? Are you encrypting your data in transit and at rest? Are you using multi-factor authentication and managing user access rights? Are you logging everything to a SIM and then alerting and investigating the events? Are you patching your systems, reviewing and rating the vulnerabilities, and doing so in a timely manner? It's critical that you read the cybersecurity insurance policy and understand the fine print. What's covered? Does it only cover certain types of cyber attacks? A lot of insurance providers are updating their clauses to be more specific around cyber attacks. Does it require you to do annual or more frequent pen testing in your environment? Does the policy cover business interruption so that any loss of revenue during the attack is covered? Does your policy have a war exclusion or hostile act exclusion? Most current policies do. An example, in 2017, attacks caused by NotPetya were not paid out by some cyber insurance companies, claiming they fell under the Acts of War clause. Ensure you have an incident response plan in place for if and when something happens, and test it. It should include roles and responsibilities, such as who's responsible for contacting the insurance company. What information do you need to provide to them? Do you have an incident response retainer already? Is that company currently covered by your insurance policy? If not, can you add them? And what's that process? I encourage you all to take a look at your insurance policy and read the fine print.
So let's assume everyone in the audience has this really awesome information security program set up. Okay, it's set up. Why on earth do we need to document all of the steps that we are doing? How is that helpful? It seems like busy work. Nicole, how does that help us?
You need to track the awesomeness of your program. It goes back to having a detailed incident response plan. Make sure you have metrics around the trends you're seeing, vulnerabilities and patching progress. If you do it, if you say you do it and be able to show it. This is going to help you negotiate your cyber insurance policy.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about are third parties and third party risk. I know a lot of teams that are in information security are working with vendor risk managers and directly with risk and compliance teams to track and mitigate what's going on from a third party risk perspective. They probably, or maybe they do, haven't thought about actually asking about insurance policies. So talk us through adding that into your onboarding program.
Yeah, part of managing your third party risk for business critical processes is understanding their security program and making sure it aligns with your requirements. Do they have cybersecurity insurance? What does it cover? Include these reviews during onboarding and then periodically thereafter. Review their audit reports, ISO, SOC 2, whatever they have, and make sure they're doing their due diligence. And then understand their SLAs. If they're attacked, it's essential to understand their processes and timelines for coming back online and understand the impacts it has to your business.
So Nicole, Ellen, I'm going to pose a question to you. As part of the vendor onboarding process, you bring in a vendor, they're going to be a key supplier to your business, and you request their cybersecurity insurance policy. Are they sending you the full policy? Are they sending you excerpts of it? And who in the organization, who's actually reading that information?
So it could be a combination of both. They may send you the full policy or they may send you pieces of it. It's a good idea for both security and legal to review it.
Right. Okay. So Nicole kind of told us, hey, you need to track the awesomeness of your program. You're going to use that when you go back to your insurance provider and renegotiate what's included in your policy, which means y'all need to be best friends with legal. So Ellen, kind of take us through what that process looks like, why it's so important, what an information security professional should think about when they're coming to you and you're trying to figure out what needs to be included in our organization's cybersecurity insurance policy.
Sure. As you noted, it is really important for infosec and legal to work together closely on this. The policies typically renew on an annual basis, so be familiar with the dates when that will occur. You want to start working on this 3 to 4 months ahead of time to make sure that you answer all of the insurance company's questions before that renewal date. So typically the insurance provider will send a pretty comprehensive application that you'll need to complete, and then they'll follow up with additional questions. So you'll have a great opportunity to provide a lot of information about your information security program and provide proof of the efforts that you've implemented. And in doing so, you can help negotiate lower rates as well as ensure you get that renewal.
So if you're not doing it now, go make friends with legal. You guys are the information security experts. You know what you need to protect your business from. You know, here's all of the potential things that could go wrong. Help your legal team understand all of those implications, and then let your legal team, who are experts in the law and they're expert contract negotiators, let them take the full brunt of it. So you guys become a real team as you work together. So I want to talk through an example of a recent cybersecurity incident. And I want to go through the before, during, and after stages through the lens of how this particular organization would utilize their cybersecurity insurance policy. So this is a story about MKS Instruments. It's a 60-year-old company. Today they produce semiconductors. And in February, MKS was victim to a ransomware attack, and it suspended part of its manufacturing capacity, shut down their website for more than 10 days. Priority number one for their information security team was, we got to get all systems back online. Priority number one for their legal team was, we have to make sure we follow protocol to stay compliant with the fine print of their cybersecurity insurance policy. So, question for Nicole. Let's pretend you are Director of Information Security at MKS Instruments, and there is a cyber breach. What is your first response move?
You're going to have to evaluate the situation and determine the level of impact. Once you have an understanding of what's occurred, then you need to work with your legal team and cybersecurity insurance to determine next steps. You're going to want to bring in some sort of forensics investigation team to help you with, the restoration and the investigation, the analysis, root cause, just to get everything back online. And it's critical that you work with legal and the cybersecurity group to do that.
So when this happens, is your first phone call to legal? Is your first phone call to your insurance company? Who is your first phone call?
Your first call is going to be to legal, because you're going to have to explain, what the situation is. That way you're not guessing when you go to your insurance company and saying, well, we think this is happening. You have to have a pretty good understanding of what's going on first.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. So far, we've only been talking about information security and legal teams, but the nature of these incidents expand well beyond that. So in this example with MKS Instruments, their ransomware attack not only impacted their ability to produce semiconductors, but it also impacted their financial projections. So in Q1, they had planned to hit $1 billion in revenue. And because of this attack, their finance team had to publicly warn the street that they were expecting a $2 million hit to their revenue in Q1. So question for Ellen, with a $2 million revenue hit directly tied to a ransomware attack, can MKS Instruments get reimbursed by their insurance policy?
Yeah, their cyber liability policy should include business interruption coverage, which includes business income loss. So that cost should be covered, but they should make sure they comply with the claim reporting requirements in order to ensure they have access to the coverage, and also make sure they fully understand any policy limitations.
So going back to knowing the fine print and following what I call protocol. Yes. Very, very important. So, okay, so let's keep going through the chain of events that occurred in this particular ransomware attack. So MKS production is halted, and then they report a financial hit. And then MKS Instruments has a class action lawsuit filed against them. So going backwards in our conversation, we talked about knowing your organization's exposure from key suppliers and your key partners. So I would assume in this particular instance that an MKS Instruments customer was waiting on their semiconductor delivery. And then when the delivery date passes and no goods are received, MKS has likely violated their service level agreement. So, question for you, Ellen. Mm-hmm. What costs would actually be covered for MKS in a class action lawsuit?
Sure. This would be an example of the third-party costs that we talked about previously. So their insurance provider should cover this. It would include damages and defense expenses that they incur in connection with that class action lawsuit. So, subject to the things we've already talked about, claim reporting and fine print, those types of costs should be covered under their policy.
All right. So we're gonna keep going further with this particular ransomware incident example because there's more. So after a pause in semiconductor production, after the public announcement of a revenue hit, and then after the class action lawsuit filing, then a Moody's analyst comes out and says the ransomware attack is credit negative for the company. So to clarify, MKS did not get an official ratings downgrade, But what Moody's was trying to do is reinforce publicly the potential financial ramifications from one cybersecurity incident and the ever important need for any organization to bolster their cybersecurity efforts. I think as information security professionals in the audience, that's not a surprise to anyone. All of us are working towards that every single day. But what I think sometimes organizations don't fully understand the cascading impact from a financial perspective from one specific incident. So since this particular chain of events, MKS had an investigation. They identified the root cause of the attack. They figured out ransomware actors had encrypted some of their systems by deploying malware. And so MKS IT systems have since fully restored. Manufacturing's back on track. They're now back to delivering semiconductors. So I want to maybe do a forward-looking view. And this question's for Nicole. For any company that has had a cybersecurity incident, a ransomware attack like MKS Instruments, what would you recommend as preventative actions they can take moving forward so they don't have to experience something like this to this level ever again?
You're going to have to go back after the incident is wrapped up and you have your root cause and everything and go back through lessons learned. There are going to be some things that you're going to have to go back and fix. It might be worth bringing in an outside company or working with your insurance as well to see what types of things you can kind of buckle up and tighten things up with.
So that's exactly what MKS ended up doing in this particular example. They hired outside security specialists. They came in, they assessed their landscape, they remediated IT controls. They ended up strengthening a lot of their access requirements and their threat detection capabilities. They're also working on new procedures that would instill more timely restoration of financial reporting capabilities. Because in this attack, their quarterly earnings statement that they put out, it was actually delayed because they couldn't access all the systems because of this attack. So when it comes to cybersecurity insurance coverage, MKS Instruments does have insurance. They did state publicly, however, that the coverage may not cover all of the costs related to this attack. So again, we cannot reiterate enough. Number one, know the fine print of your cybersecurity insurance program. Like, know it to a T. When you guys get off of this session, everybody go back, go hang out with your legal buddy and say, I want to read that policy. I want to know every single detail. Who are we calling if somebody happens, and what order are we calling them, and what happens next? If you are not already tracking the awesomeness of what your information security team is doing, start doing it today. Document what your processes look like, what your results look like. If you need help understanding what type of format or report that should look like, please contact one of us. We can provide advice in that area. Again, knowing your exposure from your third parties. Go talk to your key suppliers, your key partners who are critical to your business, and make sure you understand if they were hit with an incident, any type of cyber incident, you know what their coverage looks like and how they're going to make sure that they can still deliver on what your relationship engagement looks like. And then last, go make friends with your legal team. Help them understand what's so critical in your information security program. And they will teach you maybe a little bit about contract negotiation and all kinds of legal things. So we're going to wrap with that. Thank you for joining us today. And please let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.